Over the past couple of years, it feels like the home grinder market has pretty much exploded with options, many of which are single dosers, and all of them seem like they're squarely aimed at taking down the current king, the Niche Zero. And the one we're looking at today, if you squint, it may be kind of hard to spot the differences. On the surface, they appear to share a lot of the same DNA. But I'm no legal scholar. I'm not here to talk about patents or possible infringement. What I want to know is, how good is it as a grinder? So today, we're going to take an in-depth look at the EUREKA MIGNON single doser, or as I like to call it, the Leaning Tower of Nietzsche. Starting with the overview of its features, diving into its daily usability, and then of course we're going to compare it to the Niche, and last but not least we'll tie everything off with a little bow and final thoughts, and of course if you want to skip ahead to any of those sections, there are chapter markers down below for you to do that. Otherwise, let's just jump into the overview. So first up, let's do a quick and dirty breakdown of the Mignon's notable features. Inside sits a pair of 65mm flat burrs with EUREKA's Diamond Inside treatment, which is intended to increase burr life and grind consistency. As you maybe noticed, the grinder leans at about a 15-degree angle. This is intended to assist with what they call their ELR, or Extremely Low Retention System. They simply are utilizing the power of gravity to aid the grinds in their downward flow out of the grind chamber. On top sits a 45-gram hopper with an optional bellows to help clean out any retained grinds between batches. Like many high-end grinders, the Mignon features stepless grind adjustment, and it offers a wide range to cover all of your home brewing bases, and of course, last but certainly not least, a must-have for every all-purpose home grinder, a nice stainless steel branded dosing cup. Of course, all of the features I mentioned in the previous section all sound great on paper, but let's talk about the reality of using the Mignon. Straight from the box, the Mignon is straightforward to use and functions like a lot of other similar single-dose grinders. The layout is simple and clean, and the workflow generally feels very intuitive. Like I mentioned before, the grind adjustment knob is stepless, and it gives you the micro control needed for those accuracy-focused brew methods and meticulous dial-ins. The grinder itself is fast, and it cruises through roughly 3 grams of coffee per second. One of my favorite features is the dosing chute, which kicks out a very clean and clump-free stream of grinds into the dosing cup. And as a bonus, I found that a bottomless portafilter actually sits pretty nicely on the heavy dosing cup base. And as you can see, the grinds it produces are consistent, fluffy, and capable of brewing a balanced and sweet shot of espresso, as well as a clean and crisp pour-over. All of which easily landing in that specialty sweet spot for extraction percentages between 18 and 20%. Besides all of those positive things, there are a few other points that I noted that I think should be addressed. In their marketing, EUREKA mentions how quiet it is, and says it only hits about 60 decibels while grinding. I'm not sure what distance they measured this from, but it's a bit louder than I expected. Regarding retained grinds, the folks at EUREKA were pretty smart not to explicitly state 0, and they just called it extremely low retention. With that said, I found the Mignon's retention pretty inconsistent, sometimes landing right on the money, and others missing up to half a gram. Even with the included optional bellows that fits on top of the hopper, which tends to just be a chaff launcher. To be honest, every time I see one of these rubber accordions sitting on top of a nice grinder, I sort of die a little bit on the inside. But all in all, the Mignon single dose grinder is a great all-around option for any home barista. Considering the uncanny resemblance the Mignon has with the Niche, it's hard not to compare the two. By now you likely realize the Mignon is a good grinder, but it isn't the niche killer it's cracked up to be. But to find what really sets these two grinders apart, you have to live with them for a while and look beyond their obvious differences. Of course, they are both highly capable grinders, but the Mignon falls short of the Niche in a few key areas. For one, the grind adjustments aren't nearly as straightforward. The large dial and corresponding numbers on the Niche make switching brew methods very quick and intuitive. But the small dial with multiple full rotations on the Mignon isn't as user-friendly, requiring more focus on how many turns you need to go back and forth between your favorite brew methods. Also, the niche has a smartly designed factory-installed disc that mitigates popcorning issues that can negatively affect your grind consistency. The Mignon, on the other hand, requires you to manually open and close the hopper gate to achieve a similar effect. I also would have loved to see something like the niche has, where there's a pressure-actuated switch that can either engage or disengage the motor by using the hopper lid. Had the Mignon done something similar to the hopper gate, it would be neck and neck with the niche on multi-brew and dial-in workflow. Now, if these things I pointed out sound sort of nitpicky, it's because they are. These grinders are very similar, from the look all the way down to the function. So these small but convenient features on the niche make its workflow just that much cleaner, simpler, and user-friendly. Which from my perspective matters, because I'm using them on a daily basis. The biggest thorn in the side of the niche is its lack of availability. It's the reason why all these different grinders start coming out, because they just can't fulfill the amount of orders that people want to make, which, to be honest, isn't really a bad problem to have. But from what I've seen online, both are essentially being sold in waves of pre-orders. So I don't think either of them take the W on availability. And in terms of price, the niche, at least in the US, including shipping from the UK, is about $200 cheaper. And if you were to ask me if the single dose Mignon is $200 more of a grinder in terms of performance, I'd have a hard time justifying it. But knowing that flat burrs are more expensive because they need to spin faster and the motors need to be better, that's probably where that extra $200 is coming from. Considering Eureka has been around for over 100 years now, it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that the Mignon single dose grinder is a solid option. In the end, had I never used a niche, this review would be more or less without fault on the side of the Mignon, and I think that's high praise for both grinders. The biggest differences between the two grinders is burr type, which, beyond anecdotal evidence and personal preferences, falls on your tastes and your preferred brew methods. As an avid espresso drinker, I just find the coffee ground using conical burrs creates a much more textural experience as well as higher complexity. While flat burrs tend to land more on clarity and crisp acidity, which I lean more towards for filter coffee. So to wrap all of this up, the Eureka Mignon single dose grinder is no niche killer. It's more like an Italian brother separated at birth. At least, that's my take. And last but not least, I want to say thank you to the Patreon supporter who sent me their personal grinder for review. I wouldn't have been able to do this without you, so thanks again. And of course, if any of you have any questions about the Eureka, the niche, or coffee grinders in general, drop them all in the comment section down below, and I'll see y'all next week. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that little bell button for notifications of new videos posted every Friday. Check out my Instagram at Sprometheus for content throughout the week, my blog at Sprometheus.com, my coffee at littlegiant.coffee, and if you want to help me make more and better videos in the future, consider becoming a Patreon member at the Patreon link in the description, and as always, stay caffeinated. Ponyboy.